Okay, so this is our second lesson for this essay, and it's going to take you through how to turn your brainstorming sheet, your organizer, into a paragraph using this checklist. So this checklist matches up with the writing prompt, and it walks you through all the steps. So the first step is our topic sentence, and we're going to use the first part of our brainstorming sheet in order to write our topic sentence. Okay, so this is a sample brainstorming sheet that I filled out. If I were doing the two myths, Orpheus, great musician, the flight of Icarus, and the theme of following directions. So, it's going to be your two myths and following directions. So if you look down here in step 3, right, for the paragraph, we've got, again, the title of the myth, the character, and the lesson. So I'm going to take these 3 things that I've highlighted here in yellow and turn them into my topic sentence, following the example here in the checklist. So in the myth, Orpheus, the great musician, the character of Orpheus, or I could just say Orpheus, taught the audience the lesson of following directions, or taught the audience to follow the directions, or the importance of following directions, however you want to write it. You can mix this order up. So if you wanted to, you could put the character first, Orpheus, in the myth, taught the audience, or you could say the lesson of following directions was taught by Orpheus in the myth. So you can change the order of those 3 things. They don't have to be exactly this order, and I would recommend you make a variation between the 2 paragraphs. But for now, with this order, I did an example paragraph, and you can see here my topic sentence in the myth, Orpheus, a great musician, Orpheus taught the audience to follow directions, and this should be in quotation marks because it's the title of the myth. So I'm just going to add that. There we go. And that would be your topic sentence. The yellow matched the yellow in our example. Okay. So then if we go back to our checklist, we're going to add a transition word, and then we're going to provide our next set of context. So the context of the character at the beginning of the story is the first box in your organizer here under A, right? So describe how the character was at the beginning. And I have written in happy, about to be married, should be bulleted. So I'm now going to change this into a nice complete sentence in my example paragraph using my transition word. So at the beginning of the myth, there's my transition word, step 2 for my checklist. Orpheus was happy, in love, and about to be married. Okay, so I've taken what was in my chart, and I've used the checklist, and I've created my context. So I've done 2 and 3 here now. Okay, and I give some other examples here in the checklist. First, at the beginning of the story, Echo loved to gossip. Or in the beginning, Icarus was an obedient child and did what his father Daedalus told him to do. So here's some additional examples for you, depending on which myths and which lessons you picked, right? Then we're going to provide the quote, introducing our quote with an appropriate anchor, such as the author wrote or the author stated that, writing the quote word from word, and citing the quote properly with the author's last name and page number. And in my example paragraph, I have included it right here. The author wrote, include quote, and then the citation. Okay. So then I go back to my checklist and keep scrolling down, and I give you an example of an actual quote here from Hercules with the citation and how to cite it. Okay. And now step 5 is to add another transition word, such as next, then, suddenly, and then provide the context for what caused the character to change in my own words. So this is the next box then in my brainstorm. So you can see I did the first, how he was in the beginning, and then I did the quote, and now I am doing what made him reveal the lesson. And so I wrote in my brainstorming sheet here in purple, Eurydice died, and he went to the underworld to get her back, right? So now I'm going to put this in a complete sentence in my paragraph. Unfortunately is my transition word. Eurydice died, leaving Orpheus heartbroken. He went to the underworld to get her back. So I just made it nice complete sentences, right? And then if you look at the checklist, the next thing is to provide that next quote, right? So if we look at the brainstorming sheet, right, we have our quote that was number 2. And so I'm now going to put that in my paragraph. The author wrote, include quote and your citation, okay? So then if I look at my checklist, I have another transition word, after, as a result, or in response, right? And then providing the context, this time I've got kind of a bright pink, right? And if I look at my brainstorming check, so the bright pink down here, right, explained, what happened to the character at the end after the lesson, right? What caused the lesson. So then Hades agreed, but placed a condition on it, or if he couldn't turn back, right? Or if he didn't follow directions and looked back, so Eurydice disappeared. So I had kind of bulleted that piece of it. So now I'm going to put this into my paragraph with a transition word in front of it, right? And making nice, complete sentences. So in my paragraph, I wrote, when, there's my transition word, Orpheus arrived at Hades' Hall, he's agreed to allow Eurydice to return to the underworld, from the underworld. However, I threw an extra couple of transitions in here because this section's a little longer. He placed a condition on his decision. Orpheus could not turn back to look for her as he ascended out of the underworld. Sadly, Orpheus did not follow directions and looked back, causing Eurydice to disappear. And of course, if we look at the checklist, and the next thing I do is put my quote number 3. So in my brainstorming sheet, I should have highlighted a quote that supports this and numbered it 3. And I will now put that into my paragraph the author wrote, including the quote and the citation. And then from there, the next thing is, and I have it highlighted brown here, conclude your paragraph with how the changes in the character revealed the lesson, right? So this is that B part. This is 3B on your brainstorming sheet. So if we look back at my brainstorming sheet, right, 3B, explain what the audience learned. I wrote here, the Greeks believed in authority and people should obey the laws to avoid hurting others or themselves. So you want to take this part of it beyond just people learn to follow directions, and tell us more like what we learned about the Greeks from this. And so, or how it applies today, or how we can relate to the Greeks, something like that. On the checklist, I give a similar example, the failure of Orpheus to succeed in his quest of returning Eurydice to the land of the living, taught the reader it was necessary to trust others to be successful. So again, he should have trusted Hades. We don't need to trust Hades. Hades doesn't really exist. But the lesson still applies in that we should trust people in authority. We should trust rules are for our benefit. Anything along those lines would also be okay. And so I put what I have here in my brainstorming chart as the last sentence in my paragraph. Oh, sorry. There we go. So as the last sentence in my paragraph, through the failure of Orpheus to succeed in his quest, the reader learns, and then whatever you chose. In this case, I did what I had in my brainstorming sheet. The Greeks believed in authority, and people should obey the laws to avoid hurting others or themselves. So this is how you turn your completed brainstorming sheet into a paragraph. And then you would follow it the next day. Tomorrow, you're going to do one paragraph, and then the next day we'll do the next paragraph. So you can see it says add a new paragraph by repeating this process for the second myth on your brainstorming sheet, step 4. And so you go through this whole thing again, right? Only with the second myth and the second part of your brainstorming sheet, right? Which I didn't fill out, but you would have it filled out, and you would do this with the second paragraph. Okay, same process. Let me know if you have any questions. I am here to help.